Welcome to Chai Pe Kharcha, where we have conversations on personal finance among four NRI professionals working at tech firms. Think of these like water cooler chats you have at the office. Only this time, you will have Ishan, Madhvesh, Rohit, and Siddharth as colleagues you will be listening into. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. We are not financial experts. The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified financial professional if you need financial advice.
Welcome to the new episode of Chai Pe Kharcha. Today we have a two-person show, me and Rohit, and we'll take this opportunity to probably try a new format, jamming on a single topic and trying to see if we can go deeper on the topic. Let's see how it works out. Cool. So the topic today is reverse brain drain. Just a note before that, we've done a episode on Ghar Vapsi. We've done other episodes like Fire, which have shades of us returning back to India. In this episode, what we'll try to do is focus on the general trend that we are seeing as NRIs who are returning back to India, and then add a flavor of how one can think about when they're trying to move back. Yeah. Okay. To start off, I will ask you, Rohit, what are the 2, 3 main reasons you think are there for a large exodus from foreign countries back to India? Right. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think might be a good idea to maybe first define what reverse brain drain is so that helps set context.
Yeah,
So
good point.
essentially, brain drain means that human capital from one country is moving to a different country in the pursuit of better opportunities, educational opportunities, career opportunities, which is basically a different way of saying economic opportunities. So essentially, brain drain is people of one country leaving it, गोइंग टू अ डिफरेंट कंट्री जहाँ पे आप ज़्यादा पैसे कमा सकते हो और जनरली स्पीकिंग एक बेटर क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ जी सकते। रिवर्स ब्रेन ड्रेन, as the name suggests, is a reversal of this
Ulta.
phenomenon where people who have historically left their home country to try their luck in a different country through higher education, job opportunities, through marriage, setting up a business, whatever may be the mode of that transfer, they are coming back to the home country for any number of reasons, and we'll go into those reasons. Especially for India, for the last many years, like people from India get educated and they leave the country to set up their lives in a different country. It doesn't have to be the highly educated class, also. There are enough examples and numbers of people who form the blue collar working class and also leave the country in pursuit of better opportunities and higher earnings in places like Dubai or Middle East, generally speaking, places like Singapore, places like US, Europe, any number of places. And this is not a phenomenon that is India specific, obviously. Any country which on an economic scale is considered a developing country or an underdeveloped country, this phenomenon exists. Like people seek out opportunities of career, of financial and economic growth for themselves and their families, and whenever they are able to find opportunities to accelerate that by moving to a different country, they do that. So reverse brain drain is a trend that has been unfolding specifically for India in the past couple of years. I think especially picked up speed post the COVID reopenings that happened in 2021, 2022. And essentially what that is people who went to an America or Canada or a Europe, they're starting to come back. And then to your question, what are 2 or 3 reasons that this is happening? Right. One of the biggest reasons is rampant inflation all over the world, which is making it very hard for even the high earners to maintain a good lifestyle. तो अगर हम लोग अमेरिका का एग्जांपल लें, in some of the larger cities, your San Francisco's and your New York's, which has a very high concentration of working class, like white collar people, the cost of living is so high right now that even with 6-figure salaries, people are barely able to make ends meet. And I have friends, and you have friends who are living in the top cities and the best countries of the world, economically speaking. And we know that they have talked about struggles in everyday life, but then they struggle to save for their retirement or for the future of their children, funding their education, things that you consider fundamental parts of life. So that's the first big reason. The second big reason, specifically to India, is that economic and career opportunities in India have grown so exponentially in the last few years that in many cases, you are hearing about people making practically the same amount of money that they are making living, or
Probably more in
probably
some
more in.
cases.
So अगर हम- जब से मैं स्कूल में था, तब से न्यूज़ में हर साल एक आर्टिकल आता है कि आईआईटीज़ और आईआईएम्स में कितने करोड़ का पैकेज लगा, राइट? लाइक व्हाट वाज द हाईएस्ट पैकेज
Correct.
XYZ institute.
Hmm.
And
Right.
it always used to be a mind boggling number, and every few years the scale of that number goes up a little bit, right? एक टाइम था जब 1 करोड़ was the thing कि 1 करोड़ का पैकेज लगा किसी का, बट देन ऑब्वियसली द फाइन प्रिंट वुड ऑलवेज से कि यार ये 1 करोड़ का पैकेज इंडिया में नहीं है, ये पैकेज यूएस में है, डॉलर वैल्यू
Yes.
में है। तो इंडिया में 1 करोड़
Right.
मैसिव अमाउंट ऑफ मनी, maybe in the US that gives you like a middle class existence. इंडिया के अंदर आज के दिन में 1 करोड़ का पैकेज is commonplace for tech
Yes.
workers or finance
Right.
investment banking professionals, startup, like people who gain equity, who are like early joiners in a startup, and the startup sees some amount of success, they liquidate their ESOPs. Like 1 crore is something that you hear about pretty frequently these days. And we both have friends in common who are talking about 1.5 to 2.5 CR ka package in India.
Yeah.
And a big part
Yeah.
of that is cash, right? They are making
Yes.
more than 1 CR in cash in India. So that's reason
Yeah.
number two. The pay scales in India have gone up for the right type of industries and the right type of talent. The pay scales in India are no longer a hurdle for them to compare their life in a different country and compare their life in India and then make a choice. The third thing I think is network and support. I can share from my personal circle people who are struggling to raise kids, people who are struggling to have a home cooked hot meal because career and the work pressure and everything else is so high in, let's say, a country like the
Right.
US. And no matter how much money you're making there, affording a house help is something that not even millionaires are doing.
पर सर ये
Yeah,
सॉरी
yeah,
टू स्टॉप यू, ये तो लेकिन पहले भी था ना,
ये पहले था,
ये तो रिसेंट नहीं
ये
था।
recent नहीं था, but this third reason combined with the first 2 reasons is
It
basically
has an
having a
impact, yeah.
compounding effect. तो पहले क्या होता था कि you would
Correct.
suck up and pay the cost of not having a network of friends, family, any kind of help around the house, because in return you were making more money. Like quality of life in India
Yeah.
historically compared the quality
much
of
higher.
everyday life in a country like a US or any other more developed country is was not that great. Which then brings us to the fourth reason, that in many cases, your daily life in India, if you have some decent amount of money, is no longer that bad. Right? Like, yes, you hear about traffic and you hear about pollution, but have you seen the traffic in other parts of?
Some of the
Yeah,
other countries.
ultimately you have to make a trade-off. And what is fueling this phenomenon of reverse brain drain is the fact that the trade-off is increasingly favoring a return to the home country rather than continuing
Yeah.
to live a rather miserable existence in a foreign country or developed country.
Research. I agree. In fact, I'll just add two more things which I think I agree with the 3 points. दो और चीजें जो और एम्पलीफाई कर रही हैं ये तीन चीजों को. एक इज ए स्टेबल गवर्नमेंट. मोदी सरकार ने आई थिंक there's economic and political stability which makes a big difference in the outlook, not just from foreign investors but even
Yeah,
Indians who want to
yeah,
come
that's a
back.
great point.
तो वो एक बड़ी बात है. दूसरी बात, to just pick on what you said of comparing lifestyles in both countries. I think as in our generation and the generation after us and the generation before us, the difference is we ha- slowly we have progressed, not just in the last 10 years, but slowly India has kept progressing. So the mindset has changed. में जाके काम कर रहे थे, their mindset was pure, भी पैसा जितना कमा सकते कमा लो क्योंकि यहाँ इसके लिए आए. अब हम, यानी I can talk for both of our mindset and the friends around us, we are, how do we live the richest life
Exactly.
possible? And richest is not just in terms of wealth, but in terms of the experience you have, the things that your kids are learning, all of those things. ये तो चीजें, I think, and also something that has happened more recently is a lot of the Indian population which is outside is in tech, IT sector में. And the layoffs that have happened, they have made people rethink कि भाई यहाँ तो हम विदेश में ही हैं और कुछ भी हो सकता है, तो क्यों ना जो हमारे सेविंग्स हैं उनका आर्बिट्राज यूटिलाइज करें, गो बैक एंड लिव अ मच बेटर लाइफ. एंड यू एज यू मेंशन्ड कि इंडिया में भी सैलरीज बड़ी जोरदार मिल ही रहेंगी.
ने जो सर गवर्नमेंट वाली बात बोली उससे सॉर्ट ऑफ कनेक्टेड एक चीज और भी है. देयर इज समथिंग आई फील एंड आई होप others will agree with me. A sense of pride has come back to
यस.
the country. अब इसको आप गवर्नमेंट को उसका क्रेडिट दे दो या just generally the country has progressed to a point where I remember it used to be, क्योंकि मेरी फैमिली में बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो फॉरेन कंट्रीज में सेटल्ड हैं एंड आई रिमेंबर very vividly the tone of the conversations that used to happen when I was a kid.
कुछ नहीं हो सकता, कुछ नहीं हो
Exactly.
सकता
It
है
used
से.
to be a matter of shame in some ways, right? कि हम
Yeah,
इंडिया से हैं, हम इंडियंस हैं. That was not a matter of pride, that was a matter of shame.
right.
And कुछ नहीं हो सकता. यहाँ की लाइफ तो ऐसी है. इंडिया में तो भ्रष्टाचार है. I feel like within one generation, that narrative, while I won't say कि that has gone away, but for more and more people in the country and outside of the country, that narrative has started to change. There is a sense
बिल्कुल
of
सर.
pride
नो डाउट.
associated with the country. There is a sense of wisdom and wanting to connect with your roots. There is a sense of increasing realization कि यार ये जो थोड़ा वेस्टर्न लाइफस्टाइल जो ऑलमोस्ट पूरी दुनिया ने अपनाया है, it's not necessarily the healthiest lifestyle, it's not necessarily the most stress free way of living your life. There are, like, India is one country among many others which has a very spiritual root. Right? And as modern life
Yes.
becomes more and more stressful, and your wants continue to become your needs and your desires continue to expand, and social media fuels that desire to have more, do more, look better, whatever it is, to at least for a part of the population that lives outside of the country, I think that sense of finding your roots, that sense of finding some kind of stillness, some kind of spirituality, and that is also a not insignificant part of the
Ab- बहुत बड़ा है सर, बहुत बड़ा है. Things like when you hear the schools in Britain have started to teach Sanskrit, or you see a Westerner trying to
Yeah.
teach yoga, you realize कि यार हम क्यों नहीं सीख रहे हैं? बहुत I'll give you one more example which I'm assuming it's not my bias and इसलिए मेरे को YouTube नहीं दिखाता बार बार वो, but things like Shankar going to our EAM, going to these foreign conferences and telling it
Yeah.
on their face कि भाई this is India's
Yeah.
chance. You like it, don't like it, we
Exactly.
don't care. Things like that. You start feeling, हाँ यार, we are largest democracy in the world. Now the largest populated country, we have the most human capital. We are not as any in terms of age, average age, we are not a aging population. There's so much potential, right? From having a big marketplace for our businesses to, as you said, our spiritual roots, जहाँ पे there is a realization.
And you can feel some of these things in various different, even on social media, right? Like things like Ayurveda, yoga.
हाँ,
There
right,
are so many content creators who talk about how our ancestors used to live their lives, right? Like more organic lives in terms of growing food, in
right,
terms of using matti ke
exactly.
bartan, uh, the generational techniques of cooking your food, eating your daily lifestyle.
और ये ना social media and add YouTube into social media also has played a big
Def-
part in it. यानी social media को generally negative light में देखते हैं. But this is an essential part of spreading mindset
Exactly.
to such a broad audience कि आप you realize कि हाँ, why didn't I think about this? There's a
In fact, I
different
was
perspective.
कुछ दिन हिंदी पोएट्री और ये सब, तो
Right, right,
and I was enjoying it. You know, I'm a fan of Hindi poetry.
right.
And I started thinking about a time when English language bol pana or being fluent in English, such a massive
Yeah,
aspiration when we were kids, right? To the
very good.
extent कि आज के दिन में हमारी जनरेशन के लोग जो पेरेंट्स हैं, उनके बच्चों को इंडिया में रहते हुए कोई देसी लैंग्वेज नहीं आती है। एंड आई एम नॉट जस्ट सेइंग
अंग्रेजी
एनी
आती
एनी रीजनल लैंग्वेज, ऑल दे नो इज
है.
इंग्लिश, क्योंकि इट वाज सच एन एस्पिरेशन कि like English was such an aspiration, and being from India was such a matter of shame कि लोगों ने उस
Yeah.
पार्ट को काट देने की कोशिश की है अपनी लाइफ से कि यार हम तो की कोई
बिल्कुल.
भाषा ही नहीं बोलेंगे।
But it's also a matter of opportunity. In English also gave you apart from the status part, it gave you job
100
opportunity. अपना someone like कपिल शर्मा ले लो या जो अभी मैं अटल हूँ अभी क्या नाम है यार बहुत फेमस एक्टर है
राजकुमार राव,
पंकज
पंकज,
त्रिपाठी पंकज त्रिपाठी पंकज
इवन इसको भी देखो ना, जाकिर खान,
नहीं
लाइक कितने सारे
जाकिर खान हिंदी कॉमेडी हाँ
who are not only being incredibly successful without the language, but
but actually openly ridiculing people who are speaking the language.
openly. But beyond that, I think at a subconscious level, what they're also doing is bringing that sense of pride. कि यार
Yes,
अगर आप हिंदी बोलते हो और आपकी इंग्लिश इतनी कुछ खास नहीं है, doesn't matter. Because if you think about it at a
correct.
slightly higher level, ये थॉट प्रोसेस यहाँ से ड्राइव होती है कि समहाउ देसी लैंग्वेज इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज से
Inferior है.
पर
Right.
जब आप यू विल रियलाइज कि अराउंड द वर्ल्ड देयर आर वेरी फ्यू पीपल हु कैन स्पीक मोर देन वन लैंग्वेज और
Correct.
इंडिया के अंदर मेजॉरिटी ऑफ पॉपुलेशन कैन स्पीक मोर देन वन लैंग्वेज राइट
Correct.
तो यूएस के अंदर में इट इज एक्चुअली एस्पिरेशनल फॉर पीपल कि यार आई विश आई कुड स्पीक अनदर लैंग्वेज और यहाँ पे
Right.
किसी को
Default
2,
है.
3, 4 लैंग्वेजेस अपनी बात करूँ मैं हिंदी, इंग्लिश, बंगाली ये 3 तो मेरे को बेसिक आते ही आते हैं।
Right.
आपकी बात करूँ तो हिंदी, इंग्लिश, मराठी आपको आती ही आती है। लाइक ये तो बेसलाइन है हमारा।
इंग्लिश, हिंदी, मराठी, पंजाबी भी आ जाती है.
पंजाबी भी आ जाती है,
हाँ,
अपन गुजराती भी थोड़ी बहुत समझ लेते हैं।
गुजराती भी बोल
राइट।
लेते हैं.
तो
हाँ,
उनकी स्क्रिप्ट्स अलग है,
it's
उनका ग्रामर थोड़ा अलग है एंड ऑब्वियसली देयर आर डिफरेंट वर्ड्स दैट रिप्रेजेंट डिफरेंट थिंग्स। India is a multilingual country and a good percentage of the population can speak and understand and converse in more than one language.
multiple
That's
languages.
actually an aspirational thing outside of the country.
Let's discuss considerations when and we have covered it in Garvapsi to a large extent, so we'll not repeat that piece. Let's generally discuss more higher level things like when the reverse brain drain happen. And I don't know if you know someone who's gone back recently. We know one of our common friend who's gone back. But what are the immediate considerations that person, immediate as in the next 3 to 5 months? Yes, the taxation I know is a big one. But what else do you think should that person be worried about?
So I think पहले तो इसको at the minimum 2 parts में divide करना चाहिए. One, some amount of reverse brain drain happens without the person's choice. आपका वीजा
Take the
चला
big
गया,
part.
you just can't stay in the country anymore. तो आपको जाना पड़ेगा।
Yeah.
फैमिली में कोई बीमार हो गया, पेरेंट्स might need care. A lot of people make the move based on that. So there are a couple of different scenarios where your hands are tied, so it's not really a choice. So we will not talk about that. जिन लोगों के पास choice कि they can continue to live where they are living, how they are living, then the question in my mind basically sort of starts from the root of fire, which is what kind of a life do you want? Imagine that lifestyle. यार मेरे को अच्छी जॉब चाहिए, अच्छी कंपनी, ब्रांड वगैरह वगैरह. And then imagine what your expenses look like in order to live that kind of life, in order to provide the right opportunities for your kids, in order to meet the healthcare needs of your family, of your dependent parents, grandparents, etc. Do the math in terms of purchasing power parity. नेट अगर आप जहाँ भी रह रहे हो वहाँ पे अगर आप लेट्स से अगले 3 साल 5 साल रहते हो, what will be the amount of money that you are going to save? एंड देन अगर आप इंडिया में जाते हो तो इंडिया के कॉस्ट स्ट्रक्चर्स एंड टैक्स स्ट्रक्चर्स के बेसिस पे what will be the amount of money that you will have? What will that amount of money represent in terms of your lifestyle? And then that helps you make a decision. Now, of course, we are leaving out many other qualitative factors. It's not a hidden fact कि आज इंडिया के अंदर में multiple big cities have a massive pollution problem. It's not just the math that needs to work out. Also, those qualitative aspects of life. So again, I'll go back to the trade-off point that I was talking about earlier. Ki you will gain something and you will lose something. It's no doubt at all ki there are a majority of places in developed countries which are cleaner than equivalent cities in India. There is a safety aspect, especially for women. On average, adjusting for population and adjusting for other factors, अगर आप normalize करके देखो उसको तो you can say that many foreign countries are safer than India in different dimensions. But then again, you can make an argument gun violence, terrorism,
Yes.
wars breaking out across Europe. There are enough threats that have emerged across other parts of the world to again make you revisit that trade off.
Exactly. नहीं नहीं ये again sorry to interrupt. ये एक अच्छी ये नहीं you've raised a good point and I'd also like to back it up as a devil's advocate on the argument of reverse brain drain. एक चीज जो जानते हैं in the back of the mind we know there are some things that even with all the progress that our country has made aren't up to par to let's say a place like Singapore. पता है कि लाइट जाएगी और हमको और भी चीज़ें पता है थोड़ा भ्रष्टाचार ज़्यादा है डे टू डे लिविंग में आपको दिक्कतें होंगी पोल्यूशन वगैरह सब पर एंड हु इज नॉट लिव्ड इन इंडिया फॉर द लास्ट 5-7 years only experienced it जब छुट्टी में जाता है 25-30 दिन then when goes back and it translates to a period of 1 year 2 years उसको तकलीफ हो realize it when going back they only see the good part after every few weeks at least initially you
Sure.
start thinking यार गलती तो नहीं करी
Absolutely.
right? But that's also any we are though we have professed the idea of going back and all of that there is a realization ki not all is
Not at all.
rosy there are some hard truths that
Absolutely.
any NRI going back especially the ones from the developed countries
To anyone who's listening to this, considering this kind of a move, it is not an easy decision. There are, even today, there are so many things about some of the developed countries, places like Singapore, Dubai, some places in the US, some places in Europe. Your day to day life, your earning power, there's no denying facts.
definitely
But given all facts, there are things that have happened in the last decade or so which has tilted the trade off in favor of India to an extent where making a decision is becoming feasible. वरना पहले it just used to be clear cut कि यार फॉरेन
no
हाँ इट
brainer
वाज अ नो ब्रेनर कि अगर फॉरेन की कोई
settle हो
opportunity
जाएंगे
मिलती है,
हम पासपोर्ट लेने
निकलो
जा रहे
और
हैं
that is not so black and white anymore. There is enough gray, and that gray hopefully will keep becoming more white uh, to a
Yeah.
point where call me a dreamer, but there might come a day where people from those foreign
outside will aspire या अपने
will
बात की
aspire to
देख
live in India. यार why not?
that is
ये
I
लोग
I have no
spirituality
doubt
से
that
जुड़े
will
होते हैं. Then if you talk about the fire
सही है
movement, one of the big things in the fire movement is if you have hit your fire number, let's say you are a US born and brought up citizen and you've made a decent amount of money, there are enough
yes
materials on the web which basically say कि यार you don't need to continue living in the US. You can go to a Southeast Asian country, you can go to a Indonesia, Philippines, and you can find these amazing communities where education, healthcare, your day-to-day living is all top notch, but you pay a fraction of the cost that you would in the more Western countries. I think India can absolutely emerge as a destination, as a place where enough economic opportunity exists that students might want to come there and start their careers in India. I think sky is the limit here.
I'll end with a quote that I heard from Nikhil Kamath in the Vibrant Gujarat वाला जो summit हुआ था ना अभी, उसमें he said कि you know India is where the party is happening now, and all the countries are worrying कि we shouldn't be late to it. So I think it's true. ठीक है, ठीक है. Good chat, good chat. I think we enjoyed this type of conversation. So maybe we'll try more of these on future episodes. Thank you for tuning in to Chai Pe Kharcha, and see you again in the next episode.